Today we are putting on the white tie and tails. We are pouring the driest martini imaginable.
And maybe lighting a very expensive cigarette in long holder.
Exactly. Because we are back with another installment of what we like to call the podcast Porter-Pedia.
Our little corner of the world.
It's our recurring obsession with the life, the world, the music, and, the absolute genius of Cole Porter. But before we get into the main event, and it is a tragic event today, we have to talk about the resource that has basically become our Bible for this series.
It really has.
I am talking, of course, about Porter-Pedia by Steve Okoniewski. If you consider yourself a fan of the Great American Songbook, seriously, if you don't have this on your shelf, you are doing it wrong.
It is, and I don't use this word lightly, exhaustive. It's just staggering what's in there. And it's not just us saying that. The industry reaction has been huge.
Right. Jeff Harnar, who is, and this is no exaggeration, essentially the king of the New York cabaret scene right now and knows more about Porter than probably anyone alive, he called this book a Cole Porter essential.
In all caps.
Yeah.
I saw the quote. The exclamation point was there.
The exclamation point was earned. And he also called it Wonderbar.
Which, coming from a guy who lives and breathes this music every single night on stage, that's the ultimate stamp of approval. It's not just an academic thing. It's a performer's essential tool.
We actually did a full breakdown of the book way back in episode 47. So if you want the full gushing review, you can go check that out. But seriously, just look at the link in the show notes. Steve has done something incredible here.
Okay, so with that said,
Okay.
let's move on to today's topic. We are using that research and a few other sources to look at a very specific year, 1916.
A year that, you're right, it usually just gets a paragraph in the biographies, but it deserves a whole chapter. It's a foundational moment.
A painful foundational moment.
So Cole Porter is 23 years old. And I really want to set the scene here because it's so important. We are not talking about the old, crippled, cynical Cole Porter of the 1950s. This is the golden boy.
Oh, absolutely. He's the Prince of Yale. He's wealthy, thanks to his grandfather. He's exquisitely educated. And he has this absolute, unshakable belief that he can just walk onto Broadway and conquer it because he's Cole Porter.
And he thinks talent and just being clever is enough.
And that is the trap. That's the whole story right there.
Because today's deep dive is about the moment that entire myth shattered. It's about his first Broadway musical, See America First. And, spoiler alert, it was a disaster.
A spectacular, humiliating train wreck of a disaster.
So we're working from a stack of sources today, including some primary documents, reviews from the era, to basically perform an autopsy on this failure. Because I really think this isn't just a story about a bad play. It's a story about the difference between being smart and being an artist.
Right. And that's such a crucial distinction. It's the difference between salon wit, making your rich friends laugh at a dinner party, and theater craft, which is holding an audience of complete strangers captive for 2 hours.
And young Cole Porter in 1916, he had absolutely no idea there was a difference.
He thought they were the same thing.
So let's go back. Before the crash, who is Cole Porter in 1916? Because he wasn't a nobody. He was, arguably the most famous guy at Yale.
Oh, easily. And you have to understand his background to get why.
Yeah.
He grew up in Peru, Indiana.
Which I always forget is a real place. It sounds like something he would have made up.
It does, but it's very real. And his grandfather, J.O. Cole, was a tycoon. A serious 19th century style tycoon. Coal, timber, land, just rolling in it. So Cole grows up with all this money. But his mother also ensures he gets this intense musical training.
From a very young age.
Violin, piano, theory. He's not just doodling. So by the time he gets to Yale in 1909, he's already this very distinct character.
The source material we have describes him as the most entertaining man in his class. But what does that actually look like in 1909 at Yale?
Well, it looks like a guy who realized really early on that if you can sit at the piano, you control the room. He wasn't a jock. He was small. He was fastidious, meticulously groomed. But he wrote the football anthems.
That's the part that always gets me. Bulldog, Bulldog, bow, wow, wow. That's Cole Porter, the man who wrote Begin the Big Wine.
That is 100% Cole Porter. And bingo Eli Yale. He wrote these thumping, aggressive, rah-rah fate songs that are still sung today. But then, late at night in the dorms or the fraternity houses, he'd write these other songs.
The real Cole Porter song.
The beginnings of them, yeah. Satirical ballads, witty little takedowns of social climbers, of debutantes, of his professors.
The sources we looked at mentioned that his wit was as sharp as a razor blade.
And that's key. He was writing for his peers. Rich, educated young men who got all the inside jokes, who understood the classical allusions. He was cultivating this persona, effortlessly charming, perpetually seated at a piano in a dimly lit room. He was playing the part of Cole Porter before he was even famous.
So he graduates Yale, he's the king of the campus, he's a legend, and then he makes this pivot that, looking back, seems completely insane. He goes to Harvard Law School.
Because of the grandfather.
Yeah.
Because of J.O. Cole. The old man did not view songwriter as a legitimate career for a gentleman. Lawyers are gentlemen. Bankers are gentlemen. Songwriters are, well, they're basically carnies in his eyes. Show people.
So Cole, being the dutiful grandson, at least for a minute.
For a minute. He goes to law school. And how did that go?
Terrible. You can imagine.
He was miserable. He apparently spent more time writing shows for the Dramatic Society, the Hasty Pudding Club, than he did studying torts. But there's this legendary story, and all the sources seem to confirm it's true, about the dean of Harvard Law.
Okay, I need to hear this. Because usually deans are the ones telling you to buckle down and stop messing around.
Not this one. So Cole is failing. He's clearly disengaged. And the dean calls him into his office. And instead of saying, Mr. Porter, you need to study harder, he basically says, Mr. Porter, why are you wasting your time and my time? You are a musician. Destiny intends you for music. Go to the music school.
That is incredible. A Harvard Law dean telling a student to drop out and become an artist.
It changed his life. He immediately transferred to the Harvard School of Music. And this is a really, really important distinction for our story today. Cole Porter wasn't just a guy who could pick out a tune on the piano. He wasn't self-taught.
No, this is formal training. We're talking classical European-style training.
Heavy classical training. He studied counterpoint, harmony, orchestration. He learned the rules of European art music from the ground up.
Can you define counterpoint for us non-music majors? Just quickly, why does that matter here?
So, in the simplest terms, most pop music, then and now, is a melody with chords underneath it, like a person strumming a guitar and singing. That's homophonic. Counterpoint is when you have multiple independent melodies playing at the same time, weaving in and out of each other, all making sense together.
It's more complex.
It's like 3D chess versus checkers. It requires a lot of intellectual horsepower to write. It's mathematical, it's architectural.
And Porter could do that. He was good at it.
He excelled at it.
Yeah.
And this leads directly to what we can call his aesthetic rebellion, because he looked at the American music industry, which was Tin Pan Alley, and he sneered at it. He held it in complete contempt.
So what was Tin Pan Alley in 1916? What was he rebelling against?
It was a factory,
Yeah.
literally. Songwriters sat in cubicles in New York, banging out simple, catchy tunes designed to sell sheet music. That was the business model.
And the lyrics were simple.
Moon, June, spoon, rhymes. Very sentimental, very predictable melodies and harmonies. The goal was to write something your grandmother could play on her parlor piano after hearing it once.
And Cole, the Harvard-trained intellectual with his counterpoint, he hated that.
He despised it. He thought it was cheap, it was commercial, and he meant commercial as the ultimate insult. He wanted to write music that had surprises, harmonic leaps, unexpected chords, lyrics that referenced literature and Greek mythology and high art.
So he takes these sophisticated songs to the publishers on Tin Pan Alley, and they reject him. Yeah.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
They basically laughed him out of the room. They told him his songs were highfalutin. That was the word they used.
Highfalutin.
They said, this is too hard to sing. The average person can't hum this. There's no audience for this kind of originality. They wanted formulas, and he was giving them experiments.
So he's got a massive chip on his shoulder. He thinks he's better than the entire industry, and he decides he's going to prove it.
By not just joining the industry, but by creating his own version of it. And to do that, he looked across the ocean. He didn't want to be the next Irving Berlin or George M. Cohan. He wanted to be the American Gilbert and Sullivan.
Okay, Gilbert and Sullivan, the Pirates of Penzance, the Mikado, we all know the names. But why were they the specific model for Porter? What did they represent?
They represented the absolute pinnacle of smart musical theater. They were British, they were sophisticated, they were witty, and most importantly, they were socially acceptable for the upper class. This wasn't vulgar vaudeville. This was literature.
And Porter's ambition was to be both of them at once, the composer and the lyricist.
Combined in one person, yes. He looked at W.S. Gilbert, who wrote the words, the libretto, and the lyrics. Gilbert was a master of language as performance. He created these elaborate rhyme schemes, the famous patter songs.
Where the singer has to spit out 1,000,000 words a minute.
Exactly. And Gilbert used that linguistic brilliance to mock social institutions, the Navy, the legal system, the aristocracy. Porter saw that and thought, I can do that. I have a vocabulary.
And then there was Arthur Sullivan.
The composer. Sullivan's music isn't just a bunch of catchy tunes. It's built on a classical operetta tradition. It has structure, it has counterpoint, it has harmony. It's formally complex. And Porter's Harvard training aligned perfectly with Sullivan's technique.
So he sees this model and thinks, that's it, that's the formula.
That's my ticket. I could be the composer, lyricist, and dramatist all in one, the American answer to the great British masters.
But there's a trap there, a huge trap. You can copy the style but completely miss the substance.
And that is the absolute crux of the failure of See America First. Our expert analysis here, based on the documents, points to a critical distinction he missed, the difference between style and function.
He was obsessed with the style, the surface.
Totally obsessed. He was imitating the surface of Gilbert and Sullivan, but he missed the engine that actually made their shows work.
Give me an example of the surface that he was copying.
The rhyme schemes, for one. Gilbert was famous for these incredibly complex, multisyllabic rhymes, rhyming strategy with strategy. Porter started doing that obsessively. He would twist entire lines of dialogue into pretzels just to land a clever rhyme at the end.
It's like showing off, look how smart I am.
It's pure virtuosity for its own sake. And musically, he was writing these elaborate structures, full of all that counterpoint he learned at Harvard. But, and here's the giant but, he missed what made the songs functional in the drama.
The engine being the drama itself.
Right. If you actually sit down and watch The Mikado or Pirates of Penzance,
Right.
The songs are hilarious, yes, the rhymes are brilliant. But they happen because the characters are in a crisis. They need to sing.
They don't just stop and decide to sing a song.
Never. The Pirate King sings his big song because he is a pirate king, and he's explaining his very strange moral philosophy to a captive. The modern Major General sings his famous patter song because he is frantically trying to prove he's educated so the pirates don't kill him.
There are stakes, real stakes.
Life and death stakes, sometimes. The comedy and the cleverness come directly from the character's desperation or their ambition or their fear. Porter's songs in See America First. The critics described them as operatic set pieces. They were static.
So the character just stops the plot cold to sing a song about, what, an observation.
Pretty much. To make a witty commentary on society, it was like this show would be moving along, and then the character would step forward and essentially say, okay, pause the story, everyone. I have a very clever observation to make in three-part harmony. It's going to have some very complex internal rhymes. Okay, observation over, you can unpause the story now.
That just kills the momentum. It has.
It strangles it. It's the difference between a play and a recital.
Yeah.
Cole Porter wrote a brilliant, witty recital, and he tried to call it a musical. And the audience just sat there, bewildered.
And he wasn't doing this in a vacuum. He had a partner in crime on this project, T. Larson Riggs.
The collaborator. And this is a classic case of an echo chamber, a creative disaster waiting to happen.
So who was Riggs? What was his background?
He was another Yale man, another wealthy guy from a prominent family, had huge literary ambitions, very refined aesthetic taste. He actually, later in life, became a Roman Catholic priest and a respected scholar at Yale.
So he was basically Cole Porter, but maybe a little more serious.
They were two sides of the same coin. They had the same background, the same education, the same taste, and, crucially, the same snobbery about Broadway.
So there was no one in the room to say, hey, Cole, this is actually kind of boring.
Nobody. The source material calls it a collaboration without friction. And that sounds nice, but in creative work, friction is often essential. You think of a great partnership. Lennon and McCartney, Rogers and Hammerstein, you have different perspectives, different strengths pushing against each other. That tension creates sparks.
Porter and Riggs were just agreeing with each other.
They were just high-fiving each other about how clever they were. Their shared goal was reform. They wanted to replace Broadway's cheap sentimentality with their brand of cultivated satire.
The outline for our deep dive mentions this drawing room problem. Can you explain what that means?
Yes. Both of these men came from the world of the drawing room, the salon, private parties in wealthy homes. And you have to think about the rules of that environment. In a drawing room, the goal is polite conversation. It's about wit. It's about charm.
It's not about conflict.
Exactly. You don't scream. You don't cry. You don't have a violent, messy confrontation. You sip sherry and you make a dry, cutting remark and everyone gives a little chuckle.
But theater needs conflict. That's the definition of drama.
The theater needs blood, metaphorically at least. It needs characters who want things they can't have, desperately. Porter and Riggs wrote a show where the conflict was just people having mild disagreements, like they would in a drawing room. They constructed situations around ideas and attitudes, not around raw, dramatic needs.
So let's get into the actual show. See America First. What was the plot? Because from the description, it sounds bizarre.
It is a satire of patriotism, which is already a tricky thing to sell. The premise is that there's this wealthy, pompous American father who is obsessively, pathologically anti-foreign. He hates Europe. He hates European art, European manners, European men. Anything not American is bad.
Okay, that's a clear character. I can see that.
So he drags his daughter out west to a place called the Young Ladies Seminary at the entrance to a canyon called Nosegay. It's all very twee. He wants to keep her away from the corrupting influence of European men.
A young ladies' seminary in the Wild West.
Yeah, it's a school for nature lovers run by suffragettes. It's very silly. It's a satire of finishing schools and progressive movements. But of course, who does the daughter immediately fall in love with?
An English aristocrat.
An English duke, no less, who just happens to be there disguised as a cowboy for some reason.
Naturally, as one does.
And the central conflict is supposed to be the father trying to stop this marriage. But the way they wrote it, it's just lifeless. The father's transformation from, I hate all foreigners, to, okay, I guess you can marry my daughter. There's no big moment. There's no crisis where he has to choose between his xenophobic pride and his daughter's happiness.
He just kind of changes his mind.
He changes his mind over the course of a few conversations. The plot progresses through conversation, not through crisis. So the audience is sitting there waiting for the explosion, and all they get is a fizzle.
A well-rhymed fizzle.
A very well-rhymed fizzle.
Now that title, See America First, that wasn't just a random phrase they came up with. That was a real thing in 1916.
Oh, it was everywhere. You can't understand the show without understanding the slogan. It was a massive nationwide marketing campaign.
Why then? What was the context?
The context was World War I. The war started in Europe in 1914. The U.S. isn't in it yet in 1916. But travel to Europe is dangerous, it's complicated, it's seen as unpatriotic. The old Grand Tour is off the table.
So the American tourism industry jumps on this opportunity.
The railroads especially.
Yeah.
The national parks, the chambers of commerce. They plastered See America First on billboards, in magazines, everywhere. The message was twofold. One, it was patriotic. Keep your American dollars at home. Two, it was nationalistic. Our mountains in Glacier National Park are just as good as the Alps. Our canyons are better than anything you'll see in Europe.
So it was a very sincere, earnest, nationalistic slogan.
Highly nationalistic. And it fed into this growing isolationist mood in the country. We don't need Europe. We're better off on our own.
And Porter and Riggs, being the young, cynical sophisticates, decided to mock this.
They thought it was hilarious. They saw it as this kind of chest-thumping, jingoistic nonsense. It's actually similar to the kind of patriotism George M. Cohan was famous for, with songs like Your Grand Old Flag.
Yeah.
But Cohan did it sincerely. He meant it. Porter and Riggs were waving the flag ironically.
But the crucial question is, did the audience get the irony?
No, not at all. And that was the fundamental disaster. The average ticket buyer saw a poster that said, See America First, and thought, oh, a nice patriotic show. I love America. Let's go see it.
And they walk in and get 2 hours of two Yale guys making fun of them for loving America.
Or, even worse, just confusing them. The satire was so layered, so intellectual, that for many people, it just didn't land as comedy. It came off as cold and smug. They took the slogan literally and created a character who literally refuses to look at anything foreign. It was meant to be absurd, but it wasn't funny to the average guy who just wanted a good time and a catchy tune.
And the ultimate irony, of course, is that the man writing this show was Cole Porter.
The man who would spend the next several decades doing everything in his power to not see America first.
He practically lived at the Ritz in Paris. He was the ultimate Europhile.
Right. He was mocking the See America First crowd from his ivory tower while simultaneously trying to sell tickets to them. It was a fundamental, arrogant disconnect from his own audience.
So we have the setup, the flawed premise, the passionless plot. It all comes to a head on March 26, 1916, the Maxine Elliott Theater in New York. Opening night.
And, you know, they had high hopes. They weren't trying to make a flop. They had a real star in the lead Clifton Webb.
Who later became a huge Hollywood star. You know him from films like Laura and The Razor's Edge. He was nominated for 3 Academy Awards.
A huge star. And even then, in 1916, he was a known quantity on Broadway. He was known for being elegant and witty and charming. But even his considerable charm couldn't animate this lifeless material.
So what happened when the curtain went up?
From all accounts, a lot of polite coughing, a lot of yawning. The source material uses the word lifeless over and over again. Clever but lifeless. Witty but lifeless.
Let's talk numbers. The real proof of a disaster. How long did it last?
15 performances?
15, 1-5. That's not even a run. That's a mistake, an
Yeah.
error.
It's 2 weeks. It opened, nobody came, the word of mouth was terrible, and it closed before the posters were even dry.
And the reviews. You said
Yeah.
you had some specifics. They must have been brutal.
I do. And they are painful because they aren't even angry. Anger would have been better, in a way.
Yeah.
Anger means you provoked a reaction. They were just dismissive.
Ouch.
So the Dramatic Mirror wrote that the lyrics were studiously copied from Gilbert.
Studiously copied. That sounds like a teacher grading a plagiarism case. It's not a compliment.
No, it implies it's homework. It's an academic exercise, not art. And the same review said the music wavered between English operetta and American musical comedy without ever landing on either.
So it had an identity crisis.
A complete identity crisis. But the worst one, the one that must have just kept Cole awake at night for years, was the reviewer who simply called the entire production pretty much of a bore.
A bore. Oh, that's the worst thing you can be. You can be controversial, you can be shocking, you can be offensive, you can even be memorably bad. But you cannot be boring on Broadway.
Boring is death. And for Cole Porter, a man whose entire identity since he was a teenager was built on being the most entertaining man in the room, being publicly labeled a bore was an existential crisis. It was a dagger to the heart of his ego.
But the humiliation didn't stop with the reviews in the newspaper. There's this famous story about a party right after the show closed. This is the Salon quote.
This is legendary. It's one of those stories that perfectly encapsulates the moment. So, the show bombs. Cole is hurting. He's humiliated. He goes to a high society party, because that's what he does. That's his world. And where does he go? He goes to the piano.
Back to the safe space, the one place he knows he can win.
Back to the drawing room. And for an hour, he plays. He plays the songs from the failed show. He plays his old witty hits from Yale, and he dazzles everyone. He's charming. He's brilliant. The music is complex and beautiful. He has the room in the palm of his hand. And then as he finishes, a whisper goes around the room. And one of the society ladies, says it just loud enough for people to hear. Cole is simply wonderful in the salon. Too bad he is so awful in the theater.
Oh, that's a perfectly crafted, socially acceptable knife in the ribs.
It's devastating because it validates his deepest, darkest fear. That his talent doesn't translate. That he's not a real artist, he's just a party trick. Something to amuse the rich between courses.
It reminds me of that distinction you sometimes hear between a great conversationalist and a great writer. Just because you can tell a funny story at a bar doesn't mean you can structure a novel. They're different skills.
Exactly. And Cole was failing that test, publicly and painfully.
Yeah.
But he did have one defender in the room that night, Elsa Maxwell.
The famous, legendary society hostess.
She was his great champion, and she saw how crushed he was.
Yep.
And she went over to him and tried to console him, but her consolation was, in its own way, also kind of an insult.
What did she say?
She told him, "Cole, darling, the only reason you are a failure on Broadway is because you are much too good for them. You are too intelligent. One day, you will haul the public up to your own level."
Haul the public to your own level. That is the most beautifully snobbish thing I have ever heard.
It is pure, uncut elitism. Don't you worry, Cole. You're too smart for these peasants in the orchestra seats.
But was she right? I mean, did he eventually drag the public up to his level?
No. That's the most important part of the story. She was dead wrong. If Cole had listened to her, if he had kept trying to haul the public up to his level of intellectual games, he would have remained a failure his entire life.
He didn't need to pull them up. He needed to learn how to meet them, how to talk to them.
He needed to learn that theater isn't about being good or smart. It's about connection. It's about emotion. And he hadn't learned that yet.
So how did he learn it? Because he clearly didn't learn it at Yale or Harvard.
He learned it by running away. Which brings us to Section 6, the pivot, exile and education.
He left the country. He just got out of town.
He literally fled the scene of the crime. He joked about it later. He said the failure of See America First was so profound that it drove his collaborator, Riggs, into the priesthood. And it drove him into the French Foreign Legion.
And that's actually true about Riggs, right? He really did become a priest.
He did. He dedicated his life to the church and to academia at Yale. He never wrote for Broadway again. That one failure was enough to break him, theatrically speaking.
But Cole went to the Legion. Now, there's a lot of myth-making around Cole Porter in the French Foreign Legion. Did he actually fight in the trenches?
Well, it's a bit complicated. He definitely joined. The records show that. But they also suggest he spent a lot of his time at a headquarters working with a relief organization.
Mm.
He wasn't exactly charging the German lines with a bayonet.
But he was there, in wartime France,
Yeah.
surrounded by soldiers.
He was.
Yeah.
And here's the detail that is just absolute gold. It sounds like a joke, but it's true. Fact check. He reportedly carried a portable piano with him.
He brought a portable piano to the Foreign Legion.
A small zither piano, yes. It's a small instrument. You could strap it to your back.
I can't get over that image. You're a rugged, world-weary soldier, eating hardtack and cleaning your rifle, and here comes this dapper little guy from Indiana with his zither, asking if anyone wants to hear a witty rhyme about the Yale-Harvard rivalry.
But that's the moment. That's the breakthrough. Because he wasn't playing for Yale boys anymore. He wasn't in a salon. He was playing for soldiers.
Who are, you have to imagine, the toughest, most honest audience in the world.
They are tired, they are scared, they are homesick. They come from all walks of life, all levels of education. They don't care about your clever counterpoint. They don't care about your obscure literary illusions.
So what do they care about?
They care about feeling something. They care about a melody that sticks in your head and makes you forget where you are for 3 minutes. They care about a lyric that speaks to a real emotion, love, loss, wanting a drink.
So this was his real education, his boot camp. Not just for war, but for entertainment.
Precisely. The source material calls this performance as communication rather than display. For the first time, he had to stop showing off and start connecting. If a song didn't land with a bunch of dusty, exhausted legionnaires, he cut it. He learned economy. He learned heart. He learned what an audience actually wants.
That is such a fascinating shift. He had to leave the drawing room to find the theater, and he found it in a barracks in France.
And meanwhile, while he's having this epiphany back in New York, the theater was changing without him.
Right. He was gone for a few years during and after the war. Who was taking over Broadway in his absence?
The next generation was coming up. Jerome Kern was hitting his stride. A very young George Gershwin was just starting out as a song plugger. Lawrence Hart was writing his first witty lyrics.
And what were they doing that Porter hadn't managed to do in 1916?
They were integrating the songs into the story. Jerome Kern, especially, with shows like Showboat a few years later, was pioneering the modern musical play. He was writing songs that moved the plot forward, that revealed character, that felt like they grew organically out of the dialogue. They were doing exactly what Porter failed to do in See America First.
So by the time Porter finally came back to Broadway, the industry had evolved. The road had been paved for him in a way.
The audience was now ready for smart, sophisticated music, but only if it served the story. They had been educated by Kern and Gershwin.
Before we talk about his big comeback, though, we have to give See America First a tiny bit of credit, because there was one song that survived the wreckage.
But one gem, the diamond in the rough, I've Got a Shooting Box in Scotland.
Which is, first of all, a fantastic title.
It's a great title, and it's a very funny, very charming song. It's basically a list song where a wealthy person is bragging in a very nonchalant way about all of their properties all over the world.
I've got a shooting box in Scotland. I've got a chateau in Touraine.
I've got a silly little chalet in the Interlaken Valley. I've got a hacienda in Spain. It's just this effortless cascade of luxury. It's catchy.
So why did this one song work when all the others were dismissed as bores?
Because the wit was effortless, and it was tied to character. It wasn't trying to be a complex operatic piece. It was just a funny rhythmic list. It was a perfect piece of salon wit, but simple enough and charming enough to work on stage. It anticipated the mature Cole Porter style that cultivated charming absurdity.
And it had a life after the show closed, a significant one.
It did. Fred and Adele Astaire picked it up. This was before Fred was a movie god, when they were a top-billed brother-sister act in vaudeville. They loved the song and used it in their act for years.
That's a huge endorsement. If the Astaires are choosing to perform your song, it works. It has rhythm, it has style.
It proves the raw talent was always there. It just needed to be stripped of all the pretension and academic baggage he had piled on top of it.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We have the salon on one side and the theater on the other. What is the big core takeaway here from this spectacular failure?
I think the takeaway is about the function of intelligence in art. It's a lesson a lot of young artists have to learn.
Explain that a little more.
In a salon or in an academic setting, intelligence is often used to exclude people. It's a signal. I know this classical reference, and if you don't, you aren't in my club. It's about demonstrating your superiority. It invites admiration, but from a distance.
It's cool, in the sense being cold.
Exactly. It's cold. Theater's hot. Theater is democratic, or at least a Broadway musical is. You have to bring everyone along with you, from the person in the front row to the person in the last row of the balcony. Intelligence in the theater shouldn't be a barrier. It should be the delivery mechanism for emotion.
So when Porter finally came back to Broadway for good, with shows like Paris in the late 20s and then 50 Million Frenchmen, he was still smart. He was still Cole Porter.
Oh, he was brilliant. Maybe even more so. He still used complex rhymes and harmonies. He still loaded his lyrics with sexual innuendo and obscure cultural references. But he learned how to embed them into the drama. He made the characters smart, rather than just making the songwriter sound smart.
He stopped interrupting the story to show off his homework.
Exactly. The wit now served the character and the situation. The songs felt like something these sophisticated people would actually sing. He realized that the audience doesn't pay money to admire Cole Porter's brain. They paid to feel something.
Which goes right back to that Elsa Maxwell quote. He didn't haul the public up to his level.
Not at all. He met them halfway. He learned their language. He gave them the sophistication they didn't even know they wanted, but he wrapped it in a melody they could whistle and a story they could actually care about.
And that really leads us to the final thought on this deep dive, the value of the crash, the necessity of failure.
See, America First was a total unmitigated failure. There's no other way to spin it. It lost money, it was savaged, it was forgotten.
But the question is, was it the failure he needed?
I absolutely think so. I mean, imagine for a second if it hadn't been a total disaster. What if it had been a mild success?
Yeah, what if it ran for 100 performances, broke even, got a few decent reviews?
He might have learned the exact wrong lesson. He might have thought, okay, this intellectual operetta thing has legs. He might have stayed in that niche. He might have become a footnote, a guy who wrote obscure, overly clever shows for a highbrow audience.
The total humiliation, the public rejection, that whisper in the salon, it forced him to burn the whole thing down and start over from scratch.
It stripped away the arrogance.
Yeah.
It replaced it with craft. You don't become the guy who writes Night and Day or I Get a Kick Out of You or Anything Goes by being a snob. You do it by understanding the human heart, by understanding what makes an audience lean forward in their seats. And he learned that in the wreckage of his first attempt.
It's a comforting thought, actually, that even a certified genius like Cole Porter had to fall flat on his face before he could learn how to fly.
Maybe it's a prerequisite. The total humiliation might be the thing that creates the genius in the first place.
Well, we have certainly unpacked the glorious disaster of 1916.
We have, from every painful angle.
I want to thank you for listening to this edition of the podcast Porter-Pedia. And I cannot stress this enough. If you found any of this interesting, if you want to go deeper, you need the source material.
Go get the book. Seriously.
Porter-Pedia by Steve Okoniewski. The link is right there in the description. As Jeff Harnar says, it is wunderbar.
And honestly, it's just a beautiful object to have on your coffee table. It makes you look smart. You know, salon smart.
Exactly. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Maybe something a little less humiliating for its subject.
You know promises.
Yeah.
Failure is always more interesting.
Thanks for listening, everyone.